Hey, Patreon subscribers, thanks for joining us for the spoiler talk for An Anonymous Girl. As you may have picked up if you already listened to our review so far, which I'm guessing everybody listens to that, pauses, comes to the spoiler talk, and then comes back to the regular episode. We had a lot of stuff we could not spoil in the regular episode that is worth talking about here. So I think the tea is going to be piping in this episode. That was like a, that's a current slang thing that people say.
No idea. None whatsoever.
The tea, anyway.
All right, man, kick it off. What do you got?
I mean, my big thought, I'm going to go right to the ending. And I'm talking about like the very, very, very ending. Mm-hmm. I was going to be so massively disappointed in this book if Jess did not blackmail Thomas.
See, I'm conflicted by that. I am conflicted by that like I was conflicted at the end of Baby Teeth. Okay. When the mother... is like just happy that she gets to fuck her husband and yeah, I felt the same way. Like, who is this character? This isn't the character that I spent 300 pages reading about. So I'm not sure if I think that's great or like I'm still on the fence about it.
What conflicts you in that? Like, is it that it's not characteristic of who we've come to know? Because, like, if the study showed us anything, is that like she's got some pretty flexible morals and I don't know. I think it's fitting of the character.
See, I don't know if she has questionable morals. So let's walk through some of the things she had to do. Like the going to the lady's house, we kind of talked about on the podcast. Like, I don't even know why she had a problem understanding that. The going to the women's house for the free makeup.
Right, yeah.
She flirts with the guy in the bar, but like in a very non-premeditated way. Like she's pushed into doing it on the spot, which I think was written well, because I think I would have more questions about her if it was like, hey, tonight you're going to go to the bar and there's going to be a guy wearing a Kangol and I want you to flirt with him and see if you can get him to take you up to his room. Versus like her being like, okay, I'm here, and then being like, all right, I want you to go sit by that guy. Go talk to that guy. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. she's inched into it to the point where she's in the middle of it. It's like, what the fuck am I doing? But beyond that, she already finds out about Thomas before she's like kind of forced to do anything with Thomas. Like, she's already slept with him at the point that, right. You know what I mean? So I'm not sure. I think it's uncharacteristic of her. Now, she goes through obviously a very traumatic experience and that can change who she is. But I think I like her a little less for that. For
blackmailing him?
Yes.
Now, this is where like, This is the big kind of I think I took my zoomed out overall perspective of the book and then like judged her based on that, because like he's a piece of shit. And I feel like within her moral landscape, blackmailing a piece of shit is not a bad thing. Like, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I mean,
like there's, I feel like, and I get you, like so throughout the book, the challenges that she's sent on, she always has kind of a moral approach to them. Like, she's not a bad person. She's never a bad person in this book at all. But, right. And it's even kind of reinforced by the fact that at some point she feels so guilty about what happened with Becky, her sister, that she confesses to her parents. And it's kind of like I'm going to confess before this bitch tells you, and then I look like even more of a bad person. So there's like a little bit of a personal interest, I think, built into that. Sure. But at the same time, she confesses and then she realizes, oh, had I confessed 20 years ago, I would have felt so much better my entire life about what was going on. I would feel less guilt, blah, blah, blah. So there was like a moral lesson in that and stuff like that. However, some of the ways that she answers the questions in the initial like couple of days that she goes there led me to believe that she's not as goody two shoes as as she kind of responds to things, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Now let's talk about Thomas for a minute in this. So you said Thomas is a piece of shit because he cheated on his wife, I'm assuming, right? Because there's really nothing else to indicate. Okay.
He's a piece of shit because he allowed everything that happened to subject number 5 to happen because he was worried about losing his license because he slept with a patient.
See, I didn't read it that way. I read that he really wasn't like... How do I say this? The wife found out, and he didn't know that she knew until it was essentially too late till that girl had killed herself. So I didn't feel like he allowed anything. So take a step back, right? He slept with her, wasn't interested in pursuing any kind of relationship with her. So and Dr. Shield says he like politely blew her off, like he was polite about it, but was, kept her at a distance. I don't think he's the reason that happened to her. I mean, I think he fucked around on his wife, which is not a cool thing. But I don't know that it gets to the like he's a piece of shit that should be blackmailed for like large sums of money.
No, well, okay. So let's look at all right. So let's kind of consider the timeline a little bit. He didn't start out by fucking around on her. He started out by wanting to get out of the relationship and lying about an affair, which sent his wife over the edge.
Sure. Yeah. That's true.
And then when that didn't work, he slept with someone, I think, just to kind of like up the stakes a little bit. That's how I took it. Like sleeping with this patient was his way of like, well, if she's not gonna take the bait on the fake affair, I'm gonna have a real affair, and that's gonna end things. And then even if he's innocent up to the point where subject number 5 dies, he is not innocent in the way that he conducts himself when he finds out that Jess is another study member after he slept with, like when it all comes out, he's still just looking out for himself. He's trying to like not lose his license. And he's willing to continue to let Jess interact with his fucking crazy wife after he knows that she killed someone else that was going through the same thing.
See, and then again, I looked at it a little bit differently than you. I think the only road out for them was to work together. Like, I felt like he was protective of her, but in that way where, sure, he could have just gone, he could have gone to Lydia and said, hey, look, this is what's going on. I had sex with this girl, blah, 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 blah. Instead, I think that he was trying to get Jessica out of this unscathed. And the best way they thought to do that was not to admit to what happened.
And, all right, that makes sense within the constructs of a fiction story. But in real life, the moment you know your wife fucking killed someone...
Yeah, well, all right. That's
distance.
Fair. Yeah.
And you try to distance everybody in the world from her to protect them from any shit that's going on. Like, in a fiction story, it fits a narrative. It doesn't fit, like, the constructs of what's a good person. Like, the fact that he didn't say, whoa, you need to have nothing to do with my wife, immediately makes him a piece of shit that deserves to be blackmailed.
All right. So we'll agree to disagree on that point. But it was interesting to me, and I believe this, and again, we're talking about a fiction story, so I'm believing a fictional character, right? But I believe that Dr. Shields killed her to protect her husband.
Oh, yeah, that's what Dr. Shields believed. For sure.
And it's an interesting twist in the book, because the whole time you're thinking she didn't kill her. She convinced her to commit suicide, I'm guessing is a better way, which is a little less murderous than maybe we're making it sound. There's a difference between putting a gun to your head and pulling the trigger and telling you you're a piece of shit and here's some pills, maybe you should do something about it. Like, there's a difference.
When you're like trained and licensed in working on people's minds, I don't know. Anyway, please continue.
It was an interesting twist for the character because the whole story, I at least felt like I was led to believe that she was vindictive against the girl, and that really wasn't the case. in that she killed the girl to save her husband's profession and probably some criminal legal troubles, I would imagine. I don't know what a therapist goes through when he gets busted like banging a patient, but
it's probably
it was
not
an
good.
Interesting. Yeah, well, no, but I don't know if you just lose your license or if you can face criminal charges, or I'm not sure what the legality is, but I thought it was an interesting character. I was going to say development, but it was like that the whole time. It just wasn't revealed. It was an interesting character trait that she used the same manipulative abilities that she had with Jessica, which was to find out if her husband would cheat again. Used those same manipulative abilities on another test subject to protect her husband.
Yeah, and that all tracks. Like it like there's got to be some sort of like, I'm going to call it a mania, where you value something in your life so much that you'll kind of create a narrative around that. And basically, like, anybody who threatens the husband is obviously a bad person who is an enemy and must be stopped. That's kind of what was going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
That means Dr. Shields was fucking crazy.
Well, yeah, I don't think anyone's going to argue her sanity. And here's where I will reveal the messages that I mentioned before. Let me get my app open. Rob messaged me and said, let's see. Shit. Okay. So 2/3 through this book, and I can't help but think how much energy is being spent on a husband stepping out. It's a little insane. I responded with, I mean, that psychiatrist isn't exactly putting out sane vibes. You see, I thought she was crazy then. And then I said, also women. And then Rob commented women. So, yeah, I didn't find, I mean, other than the fact that, like, I found the characters fairly believable. I don't know, like, Dr. Shields' actions, like the things she was doing, like trying to figure out if her husband would cheat on her again, it tracked true for me. Now, I don't know how someone would go about doing that if they had a super developed understanding of how people will act, psychologically act. How that's any different, somebody else in that situation, someone less trained, would have just like followed the husband, or someone, if this was an IT professional, would be, hacking his emails or whatever. So is this how a psychiatrist would go about testing their spouse? I don't know, but the characters didn't act in a way that I thought was out of line with how somebody would act in that situation.
So that's fair, but I guess like the problem that I'm having is, as is determined throughout the book, and we said earlier, her main concern is protecting her husband from outside influences, but the entire study is inviting outside influences to put her husband in danger. And so like that's a huge, so like I was with the book up until she became kind of like substantially protective of her husband. Then I was like, wait a minute, she's inviting all of the danger onto her husband. Like, whether she knew it or not, all along, she's the one that's causing the problem. And I didn't feel like that gelled necessarily with the character of Dr. Shields. And so that caused me to have a little problem with it.
That's interesting.
But she's also crazy, so it kind of makes sense anyway.
I mean, I know many years ago, this might have even been like Real Sex on HBO or something. Like, do you remember that show?
I know of it. I don't know if I ever watched. Yeah. Wait, was that the one where like it was different? Like in a given episode, it would be like there's 8 swinger couples and they're hanging out in like on a ranch somewhere and like that kind of thing.
So yeah, it was all kinds of. I mean, it was all kinds of stuff. Like I remember one of the ones was like when the Real Dolls first came out, like a tour of the Real Doll factory, and then they had a guy who like lives with a real doll, but he like named her and treats her like a real woman. I think that may have been. There are actually services that will do exactly what Dr. Shields wants, where you hire a woman that just like is a trained
like
professional.
Like a fidelity test?
Yeah, who will approach your husband, and strike up a flirty conversation and get to a point, not necessarily sleep with him, but you know what I mean, to a point that they can determine like, hey, your dude's not faithful. Here's a recording of the conversation we had, that kind of thing. So That's a thing, man. Like, there are people who get paid to do exactly what Jessica was getting paid to do. It's just that Dr. Shields, you're right, was putting a lot of work into cultivating her into the person who could do that for her.
Yeah, I just there was it all didn't match up in the end for me. But whatever.
All right.
Whatever.
Anything else you want to cover before we go back to regular booked?
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess my overall thought in spoilers is like there came a point when the story presented enough of itself where I knew kind of where we were going with this, that I was like, why are you fucking, why? Just why? Why is all of this happening? It just seemed to go into like a Bond villain level of like over sophistication that didn't justify itself. If there was something that at the end, like, it felt like it was going into this world of something bigger, and it never left like the four people that were like kind of the main people in the story. Mm-hmm. And so it never kind of justified like the lengths that she went. And it just, that was what was so frustrating for me.
Partly so like a Bond villain, there's that scene where Jessica shows up to the house and she's wearing a black dress and Dr. Shields is like wearing like a white outfit.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh my God.
The other thing I'm going to mention, and I'll do it here. I messaged you and said I got all teary eyed. I think maybe I'm at that age where I need like testosterone injections or something.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I want to know what you're talking about.
It's the old lady. She does the makeup for the old lady, and she's running late to get to the museum. And the lady keeps chit-chatting, and then she takes a phone call, and she's doing the makeup for the lady's anniversary. And then she finds out that the lady's husband's been dead for like 8 years, and that they still celebrate their anniversary. Like, she goes out with her family. Oh my God, I'm getting choked up talking about it right now.
That what got you?
Yeah, that was some really good, like, misdirected kind of, this is an annoying lady who's keeping her from going, but she had her own story. And the story, I felt, was really impactful.
However, it was later used as a plot device to have Jess understand something that was going on between Lydia and Thomas, which cheapens the whole fucking thing, if you ask me. Cheapens it.
Yeah. All right. Maybe a little bit.
I don't know how I ended up being the dissenter on this one. You're bought into this story.
Well, there's other things too. All right. Well, we're still in spoiler talk, and I want to address some of this in my wrap up. But Jessica's worship / fear of Dr. Shields is really well done in some parts too. Like, there's the part where she's really mad at the hotel when she finds out that she was flirting with this guy, and she's like, I'm not a prostitute or whatever. Yeah. And then she's afraid that Dr. Shields is going to leave. So even though she's mad at her, she's so afraid of disappointing her. You know what I mean? And I think that is a real thing that people struggle with sometimes, is the approval versus like being mad at somebody whose approval you really desperately crave. I'm surprised that Jessica had as good a relationship with her mother as she did, because I almost feel like that would be part of the explanation for how she treats Dr. Shields, or how she looks up to her, or in some ways aspires to be her, would be like, my mom died when I was 6, would have been a little more fitting. But I mean, I really thought some of the characters were developed pretty well, and some of the interactions between the two of them I thought were pretty solid.
That's fucked up, because everything fell so flat for me. It's really interesting.
That is interesting. So, all right. There you have it. Spoiler talk for an anonymous girl. Thank you again for being a loyal patron. I always want to say Patreon, right? It's patron. You're a patron on Patreon.
You're a patron on Patreon.
You're a patron.
Yeah.
So thank you for being a loyal patron. We'll be back, I'm sure, again in a couple of weeks with another episode of Spoiler Talk. Until then, go listen to some other podcasts.